Public display of severe emotional vulnerability is rarely a genuine cry for human connection. At the highest levels of social manipulation, it is a calculated, devastating behavioral weapon. Elite sociopaths manufacture fake victimhood specifically to bypass the logical defense mechanisms of high-performing individuals, completely neutralizing their threats without ever fighting a real physical or intellectual battle. Throughout human evolution, the shedding of tears was biologically designed to act as an ultimate distress signal, instantly triggering a deeply ingrained protective response within the tribe to ensure collective survival. Today, however, that exact same biological mechanism is ruthlessly exploited by covert predators operating within high-stakes environments who have mathematically determined that faking emotional pain is the absolute fastest route to extracting unearned social leverage. This highly classified psychological framework regarding manufactured vulnerability is currently being heavily suppressed by algorithms designed to keep the general population emotionally compliant and easily manageable. Failing to completely decode this specific predatory tactic today mathematically guarantees a future of invisible social slavery, where personal resources and status are continuously drained by individuals who offer absolutely nothing in return. At the exact conclusion of this clinical breakdown, the elite blueprint for identifying and neutralizing weaponized tears will be fully exposed, providing the impenetrable mental armor required to protect your internal energy vault. Pay absolute attention to the underlying biological mechanics revealed in the following minutes, because the fundamental perception of human sadness, empathy, and manipulation is about to be shattered completely and irreversibly. Every single interaction within a competitive social hierarchy functions as an unforgiving power dynamic, where personal status is either actively accumulated through calculated discipline or silently bled out through emotional manipulation. High-performing individuals consistently fall into the devastating trap of believing that someone crying in a professional or social setting is experiencing genuine, uncontrollable distress that requires immediate external soothing. In reality, the covert sociopath sitting across the room is executing a flawless theatrical performance, utilizing weaponized tears to instantly shift the entire focus of the environment away from their own toxic behavior and onto their fabricated suffering. When a manipulator begins to cry after being confronted with their own mistakes, they are not demonstrating remorse. They are actively hijacking the limbic system of everyone present, forcing the group to abandon logical accountability in favor of emotional appeasement. The human brain is biologically wired to feel intense, crushing discomfort when witnessing another human being weep, prompting the observer to frantically offer apologies, concessions, and total submission simply to make the heavy tension disappear. Predator flawlessly understands this biological glitch, utilizing their fake tears as a massive, impenetrable shield that permanently protects them from facing the genuine consequences of their calculated actions. Ignorance of this specific dark psychology tactic is actively funding the dominance of emotional parasites, making it absolutely critical to completely dismantle this illusion before your social value is entirely consumed. The dark psychology of playing victim. The dark psychology underlying the deliberate projection of victimhood reveals that elite sociopaths prefer this specific manipulation tactic because it requires absolutely zero kinetic energy while yielding the highest possible return on social leverage. Engaging in direct, aggressive confrontation is incredibly risky and biologically expensive, often exposing the manipulator to severe retaliation and permanently damaging their reputation within the broader social hierarchy. Playing the helpless victim, however, completely reverses the traditional power dynamic, allowing the predator to silently command the entire room from the bottom up, while simultaneously painting anyone who challenges them as a cruel, heartless aggressor. This represents the ultimate psychological checkmate. The sociopath effortlessly forces their highly capable targets to lower their heavy mental armor, voluntarily stepping into a carefully designed trap under the false pretense of offering compassionate support. When a covert narcissist successfully convinces a high-performing individual to pity them, they establish a permanent, parasitic pipeline of emotional and physical resources that can be extracted continuously without raising any alarms. The target's prefrontal cortex, which is entirely responsible for logical reasoning and boundary enforcement, is completely suppressed by the sudden flood of manufactured guilt, rendering them utterly blind to the covert extraction taking place. Manipulator meticulously observes this biochemical surrender, noting with clinical precision exactly how easily the target abandons their own self-respect just to fulfill the fabricated role of the noble savior. Furthermore, the sociopath actively utilizes this manufactured vulnerability to gather highly sensitive intelligence, encouraging the target to lower their guard and share their own genuine weaknesses in a fraudulent exchange of intimacy. Once this critical information is successfully acquired, the predator securely locks it away in their mental vault, patiently waiting for the exact perfect moment to weaponize those genuine vulnerabilities against the target in the future. The victim mindset is never a passive state of existence for these individuals. It is an incredibly aggressive, highly active strategy designed to conquer competitive environments by weaponizing the biological empathy of those who are fundamentally stronger. Why your empathy is a fatal weakness. Within the ruthless mathematics of modern social hierarchies, possessing unregulated biological empathy is not an indicator of high spiritual intelligence, but rather a fatal, gaping vulnerability that covert predators actively seek to exploit. High-performing individuals constantly delude themselves into believing that comforting a weeping manipulator proves their elevated moral superiority, completely ignoring the painful reality that their behavior is merely an automatic, involuntary trauma response. And faced with the intense, suffocating pressure of a sociopath's fake tears, the target's central nervous system experiences a massive spike in terror, falsely equating the unresolved social friction with a severe physical threat. To rapidly alleviate this crushing internal discomfort, the empathetic target frantically rushes to fix the situation, offering unsolicited help and completely abandoning their firm boundaries just to return the environment to a perceived state of safety. This desperate urge to restore fake harmony is a profound display of biological submission, signaling to the entire room that the individual lacks the necessary spine to tolerate heavy emotional tension without collapsing inward. The sociopath does not perceive the target's compassion as a beautiful human virtue. They mathematically confirm that the individual is a highly compliant, easily controlled biological puppet whose emotional strings can be pulled at will. By prioritizing the temporary emotional comfort of a known manipulator over their own objective reality and self-respect, the target effectively validates the predator's toxic strategy, guaranteeing that the exact same theatrical performance will be used against them repeatedly. Believing that your deep well of empathy will eventually heal a fundamentally broken, parasitic entity is an incredibly destructive illusion carefully engineered to keep you permanently chained to the bottom of the power dynamic. True, unshakable respect is exclusively reserved for those who demonstrate the capacity to withhold their emotional validation when placed under pressure, making it absolutely mandatory to recognize that offering pity to a predator is a massive, self-inflicted psychological wound. Pause the video and deeply internalize the gravity of the behavioral trap currently being exposed, as your natural inclination to comfort crying manipulators is actively destroying your potential for future success this exact moment. If you fail to completely decode this specific psychological exploit within the next 60 seconds, your sovereign identity will be permanently erased by sociopaths who already recognize your inability to withstand emotional friction. The narrow window of opportunity to protect your nervous system and establish an unbreakable mental framework is shutting right now, making it absolutely critical that you absorb this clinical data without a single distraction. The trap of forgiving them. The biological trap of continually forgiving a covert manipulator's fake tears represents a catastrophic behavioral leak that systematically erodes an individual's self-worth and permanently destroys their baseline social status. Every single time a high-performing professional witnesses a theatrical display of victimhood and subsequently decides to offer absolute forgiveness without enforcing strict consequences, they are handing the predator a detailed instruction manual on how to abuse them. The brain chemistry of the target registers this forced forgiveness as a severe internal trauma, because the natural, kinetic energy required to defend one's psychological territory has been aggressively suppressed in favor of maintaining a fraudulent peace. This continuous suppression causes cortisol levels to permanently spike, keeping the central nervous system highly inflamed and trapping the body in an exhausting, endless state of survival where true cognitive clarity becomes mathematically impossible, because the deep, justified anger associated with having one's boundaries repeatedly violated is violently pushed down to accommodate the crying parasite. That trapped emotional energy eventually turns completely toxic. This highly destructive behavioral pattern inevitably breeds a silent, incredibly heavy resentment toward the manipulator, leading the target to secretly despise the exact same person they are continuously pretending to forgive and support. Sociopath relies entirely on this internal psychological destruction to maintain their absolute dominance, watching with immense satisfaction as the target's posture collapses under the invisible weight of carrying unearned emotional burdens. Furthermore, constantly offering cheap forgiveness completely removes any incentive for the predator to alter their toxic behavior, as they have mathematically proven that their fake tears are an unlimited currency capable of purchasing immediate amnesty. Giving a calculated manipulation tactic is never a demonstration of emotional maturity or elevated enlightenment. It is a slow, agonizing, completely silent death where the victim uses their own valuable life force to continually fund the dominance of their abuser. The heavy vault containing your forgiveness must be permanently locked, and the key completely destroyed, because granting grace to a sociopath is the ultimate invitation for your own psychological annihilation. How elite operators handle fake vulnerability. The elite top 1% operate on a completely different psychological frequency, possessing an impenetrable mental defense system that fundamentally and entirely rejects the pathetic, self-destructive urge to offer comfort to fake victims. These sovereign operators have ruthlessly purged the biological impulse to act as an emotional savior from their central nervous systems, understanding perfectly that engaging with manufactured vulnerability is the fastest route to losing absolute power. When a covert sociopath inevitably attempts their calculated public dominance test by deploying fake tears or dramatic emotional outbursts, the elite operator does not panic, flinch, or frantically rush to offer a tissue to smooth over the tension. Instead, they execute a terrifying, unblinking cold stillness with absolute precision, stripping their facial expressions of any recognizable human warmth and allowing the heavy, crushing silence to hang thickly in the air. By refusing to provide the expected emotional validation, the elite operator forces the predator to suffocate entirely within their own theatrical, toxic performance, instantly reversing the psychological attack without ever raising their speaking voice. Breaking the heavy silence first mathematically guarantees losing the power dynamic, which is precisely why sovereign operators heavily project boring, absolute cold indifference, watching the manipulator's brain severely short-circuit in real time. The sociopath fully expected a weak, compliant display of empathy and an eager attempt to resolve the friction. But instead, their sophisticated dark psychology tactics collided violently with an unbreakable concrete wall of pure emotional discipline. Firm boundaries are never compromised or apologized for by the truly elite, and negotiations with emotional terrorists simply do not happen under any circumstances, allowing these operators to command entire corporate boardrooms effortlessly. By strictly dictating the exact terms of engagement and refusing to be swayed by biological distress signals, the elite demonstrate that holding psychological leverage is infinitely more valuable than being perceived as universally kind by emotional parasites. We're standing at the absolute edge of a psychological paradigm shift, and the behavioral armor being handed to you today is the only mechanism capable of protecting your life force from complete extraction by emotional parasites. If you close this video before mastering this final execution step, you will wake up tomorrow as obedient prey, permanently volunteering to remain a pathetic social puppet who forgives their own abusers. The elite guard this specific nonverbal secret incredibly ruthlessly to maintain their absolute dominance over the masses. So do not miss the following clinical instructions if you ever intend to reclaim your psychological leverage. Reclaiming your psychological leverage today. The agonizing era of existing as obedient, highly compliant prey ends the exact moment an individual decides that reclaiming their deep respect requires ruthless, immediate physical execution rather than passive, theoretical understanding of dark psychology. The nervous, accommodating urge to rush forward and offer soothing words to a crying manipulator must be permanently deleted from your behavioral repertoire today, effectively terminating the pathetic desire to act as the room's emotional peacemaker. When a blatant, theatrical display of fake vulnerability is directed at you in a high-stakes competitive setting, you must mentally step aside and allow the heavy social tension to crash loudly onto the floor, absolutely refusing to fix the awkwardness yourself. By looking directly at the sociopath with completely cold, dead eyes and projecting the quiet, calculating stillness of an apex predator, You instantly reverse the psychological attack and reclaim your sovereign authority over the environment. You must accept the brutal biological reality that reclaiming your sovereign power and withholding your empathy will inevitably cause massive, violent anger among your social circle, prompting emotional parasites to throw severe, toxic tantrums. You will be loudly accused of being a heartless, cruel villain, and your complete lack of emotional reaction will be desperately weaponized by those who previously benefited from your severe lack of boundaries. However, you must let them scream wildly and weep hysterically in the dark room, because their deep, helpless frustration as they thrash on the cold floor is the absolute clinical proof that your new mental armor works flawlessly. The highly toxic savior identity is completely dead, replaced today by a massive, impenetrable concrete wall that protects your internal energy vault fiercely from anyone attempting to extract your highly valuable life force using fake tears. Subscribe and hit the bell immediately to join the ranks of the truly armed elite operators, mastering the heavy power of silence to become utterly untouchable in any highly toxic social environment and dominating the hierarchy forever. Do not wait for broken, manipulative people to suddenly change their parasitic nature. Evolve your own mind today, protect your internal energy vault at all costs, and permanently revoke the unearned power of sociopaths.